And you guys know this, but kids become Christians on camps. They become Christians all sorts of places, but they also become Christians on camps. And leaders are often, the light bulb goes on while they're on a camp. So as Richard said, if you add up the hours, you'll get more value hour-wise out of a camp than you do by stringing together week by week by week. But they're more intense times, so stuff happens quickly on a camp. I don't know, it's been my experience, and it's maybe not everyone's experience, but my experience in the youth ministry that I've done is that it's not like a gradual, like if you're thinking about a graph, it's not like a gradual line of improvement. You know, say my group grows in this nice, like graph. My experience is that it's like this, and then you hit something, and it could be a problem, a crisis, or it could be a good thing, and you hit it, and then all of a sudden you go whoop, and then you just go on the next level. And so moments of crisis or moments of opportunity, I reckon, are really, really valuable. Camps, Crossword, the junior, the senior one, that's the kind of thing you're talking about. So your group might come back from that camp different than when they went there. And that could be a real bonus for you and for them. So get into it. All right, in this second session, you've got there in your outlines just some little headings. I sort of thought, okay, we're on the same page. We've seen 2 Corinthians 4 briefly. We want to present the truth plainly to everyone's conscience and before God. Now, how do we do that? What does that look like? So I guess an application of that. Now, I've got some little headings there of some of the classic things that can be obstacles for us. Kids are difficult, parents are difficult, church down the road's a handful, leaders are a handful, whatever it is. Now, those are just sort of me pushing all the hotspots, but that may not be where people are at. There may be other issues that people want to talk about. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 2-3 minutes just with the people you're sitting with, probably the people you came with, the people that you do stuff with at church. Then ask them, talk to each other about what is it that is an issue at the moment in your church, in your ministry, in your experience with the kids that's either a challenge or you're not sure what to do about it, you're not sure how to get past this point. We'll hear back from that. I'll jot them down. Where they're the same as the ones here, we'll tackle them. If there's some other ones, we'll tackle them too. And I'll begin by giving you a little blurb on something, and then we'll go and have a look at some of these issues. And I reserve the right to call up Michelle and Richard and Michael and others if it's local things that I'm ignorant about. Having 2 whammies against me, being a Cape Townian and an Australian, which I realise is a huge step to overcome for you. Okay, so why don't you spend a few moments with your friends talking about some of the things at the moment that you would like help with. I'm not saying I'm going to be able to help you, but things that are worth discussing in that regard. You right? Okay, off you go. A few minutes, go for it. Okie dokies, let's bring it back together. So you can stay where you are, just pivot around so you can see my beautiful face. And let's hear back from some of the groups about some of the things. Now, there could be a whole range of things. We may not be able to get to all of them, but let's hear. We'll start from this side. What was 1 or 2 of the big things that you guys mentioned together? Don't fight over which one of you have the worst kids, okay? Great, thank you, that's a good one. Okay. Is there anything else? You obviously had...
And just not being able to get enough leaders and teachers to help us. That are committed to being trained, and committed to coming.
Great. I don't know how the groups broke up here, but anyone in this block, just stick up a hand or shout something out. Yeah. Are you talking? Are you doing kids or teenagers? I mean, it applies to both, but just out of interest, right? Okay, both. Yeah. Anyone else from this block come up with something that we can discuss? That's right. Can you explain the gospel in 8.5 seconds? Good, thanks. Any other takers here? Again, anyone from this chunk? Yes, us boys, we're a bit of a handful, aren't we? All right, let's talk about boys. No, I'm with you, 100%. So tricky managing boys and girls in the same group at particular ages, especially. What age are you spending a lot of time with? Yeah. The tweenagers. Prepubescent 8 to 12-year-olds, we'll talk about this in the third session, are now known as tweenagers. They're in between. They're too young to be considered as kids, but they're not quite teenagers yet, even though they kind of think they are in their own imagination. Glad you brought that up. Thank you. Was there? Yeah. Yep.
So talking on behalf of the grandparents and parents, I think our big problem is with materialism. But how can we assist the youth leaders and youth pastors?
Great. Thank you. Yeah. So we need to talk about parents and how that relationship works. Great. Yeah.
Discipline behaviour.
Talk about some discipline.
Especially in light of social norms now, there's really little discipline taking place at home.
Yep.
It becomes a difficult ministry environment.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So it's hard when you've got a rotating staff. Yeah. And then over this side? Yep. Good one, thanks. I've got a language barrier. I only speak English, so Australian English at that. Anyone else from this end? Yeah.
I think you brought it up earlier, the kind of competition or the perceived competition with other churches and what they do.
Yeah. Good one.
Sorry,
Yeah, sure.
mixed ability in terms of pre-knowledge. So if you've got ministers' kids in your class and you've got some completely unchurched kids in your class, obviously some people are going to know all the answers immediately and you want to do all the other ones.
Thanks. Good one. Okay, we're gonna work our way through some of these. We may not get to all of them. We'll see how we go. Let me start with this. So let me start by putting something out there that we can consider, and then we'll plug the other things into it. Interestingly, in that 2 Corinthians passage, and indeed through all 1 and 2 Corinthians, there's a lot of talk of weakness and power. So these false apostles are showing off their so-called power religion. It's all flashy, it's impressive, it's big numbers, it's all that kind of stuff. And Paul, by comparison, looks rather weak and pathetic. Obviously, the flip in that is that obviously the power is found in the gospel. That's where the power is, not in the other stuff. But when we talk about weakness, and yes, we share the weakness of Christ in what he looked like on the cross and all that kind of stuff. We don't want to get the misunderstanding of what we're talking about there. We're talking about weakness and the foolishness from the world's perspective of what it looks like to follow Jesus. Right? What that's not saying, and I don't think anyone's hearing me say this, but let me just put it out there, is that we're not giving ourselves permission to be sloppy. Okay, so that's not the kind of weakness like, oh, we're not very good at this, and we can't really do it, and no one really cares, and no one's turning up on time, but that's okay because God will work through our weakness. No. It's not talking about that side of our human failure. It's talking about our inability to do an amazing spiritual miracle. That's God's job. He's the one who's going to do that, and our role in that. So when we talk about the sort of weakness in the gospel, it's not talking about an excuse to plan badly or to not be aware of the environment in which you're doing ministry and the particular pros and cons of that. It's not talking about your inability to think creatively, or your lack of willingness to think creatively, I should say. And I've noticed a lot of what we do, when I say we, I mean just churches in general, a lot of what churches do, especially with children's and youth ministry, is you have good goals with bad strategy. Okay? So you've got a good thing that you're aiming for. If you ask use a youth example, any youth group in a mainstream church, what do you want to do? What's the point of this youth group? They'll all say the same thing. It'll be some combination of this. We want to evangelize non-Christian teenagers in our neighborhood. We want to disciple them for Jesus. We want to send them out to change the world. We want to. And they're all great stuff. Okay, fantastic. I'm on board with all of that stuff. So everyone's got this great goal, right, which is what they want to do. The strategy is how you're going to get from where you are here to meet your goal. right? Now, that's where the wheels fall off the wagon. Great goals, so people say, this is what we want people to become Christians, we want to disciple them, and we want to send them out as workers into the harvest field, or just use that for an example. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to run a big Friday night program where we're going to get an awesome band in, and we're going to sing for 45 minutes until the sweat is dripping down the windows, and then with a bunch of sweaty, puffing, red-faced teenagers, then we're going to fill them full of hot dogs. And then after that, we're going to play a run-around crazy game, and then 5 minutes before Mum and Dad come to pick them up, I'm going to tell them that Jesus is the most awesome superhero of them all. Yeah, you know. You think, whoa, okay, interesting, good goal, interesting strategy in and of itself, but certainly I don't see how that strategy is going to achieve that goal. And we can fall into that trap all the time. Now, I use one particular end of the spectrum as an example, but there are all sorts of different strategies which are culturally conditioned and even culturally expected to a point that we will go on by default. Yours might be a wild and crazy version. Maybe that's not where you're coming from, not your neighbourhood, not your church. Yours might be a very a conservative version of that. Or it might be a very African version of that. Or it might be a very Western I don't know. I mean, I don't know you guys that well. But you'll know what it is. And we need to work out in what our strategy, is that actually achieving our goals? So what I want to do is a quick little exercise now before we tackle these other questions, because some of these other questions are already dealt with, or at least begin to get dealt with, by fixing this big picture issue to begin with, by readjusting your thinking on that. So you've got some paper there, you've got a pen, you've got some friends, well, at least people who are willing to sit next to you. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to jot down the first, or 3 questions, the first half of 3 sentences. I'll read them out and then I'll give you a chance to write them down. And you're thinking about your own group now, preferably, right? If you're the only person here from your group, you can match up with another group as well. The first one is going to be, we run this group because... ... We run this group because... Why? Secondly, the goal of this group is... ... And thirdly, this term, we will achieve this by... ... Now you can put in your own group name, whatever you're doing. So here are the 3 things. We run this group because... Secondly, the goal of this group is... And thirdly, this term, we will achieve this by... One or 2 quick comments before I hand over to you for 5 minutes. Be honest in this. If you don't know why you run this group, maybe it's because, someone in the church came and strong-armed you into it and you thought, oh, I can't say no. I'm running this group to keep the minister happy, I guess. I don't know. I'm running this group so he'll stop bugging me about my tithing. It's worth it. I don't know. You can be honest, because unless you're honest, this isn't going to work. No one's going to think bad of you. We've all been there. The goal of this group is, and write down what you really want this group to be. It's your ideal picture of a desirable future. And then this term, how are we going to achieve that? Now, you have already put in place some plan for this term, presumably. You're going through a book, you're doing some program, you've got some material. So maybe you can say, well, we're doing this particular set of notes or whatever. But think beyond the teaching. Think to relationships, think to physical space, think to timing of the event, think to individual elements of the program. And maybe as you're doing that, you might be critiquing your own work as you go. That's okay. And if you haven't thought it through, then it'll be exciting as well. So 3 questions. We run this group because the goal of this group is this term we'll achieve it by. Spend 5 minutes doing it. You can do it on your own. You can do it with a friend. And then we'll hear back in a little bit and we'll talk a little bit about that and then we'll look at some of these other issues. Cool? Okay. Give me a shout if you need some help. I'll give you 5 minutes. Okay. Now, just for the sake of time, I don't think I'll get you to tell me why we run this group. I assume that if it dawned on you that you don't know why you run it, that's significant in and of itself, but I don't want you to share that with all of us. We feel your pain, but that's a conversation we can have over lunch perhaps. The next 2 questions are obviously related, right? Or let me put it this way. If they're not related, you're stuffed, basically. If they're not related, you're going to chase this invisible thing, you're going to chase your tail, pick whatever metaphor you want. You're going to expend a lot of energy for very little return, which is going to be frustrating for you and the people in your group that you're helping, the kids. So the goal of your group, now again, like I said at the beginning, we're all going to have similar things that we're going to be saying, but let's just survey how we've put it in our own words, in our own contexts. You can just stick your hand up and we'll just quickly hop around the room. The goal of the group that you run is, what is the goal of the group that you run? That'd be interesting. Great. You want the kids to come to know Jesus. Great goal. Now, as I said, they're all going to be pretty much the same, so don't worry if you repeat, but it's just nice to hear it.
Teach the children to an age-appropriate level.
Good, okay, so
Of the true gospel.
yes, that's right. So you've combined two there, which is quite clever of you. You've got your goal, which is to teach them the true gospel so they can become Christians. And then your strategy, how are you going to achieve that goal? Well, one of the things you want to do, which is a good idea, is to teach them at an age-appropriate level. So that's actually... what you've done is kind of given us a bit of a vision statement. Okay, the big vision statement is your goal and how you're going to achieve it, kind of wrapped into one. So you're ahead of the curve. Thank you. That's great. What are some other goals? Yeah. Good. Okay. To help them to be aware and useful citizens of the kingdom of God living in this world. Because as I'm sure you have experienced already, a lot of kids will come to your church. They obviously all don't come from Christian families. They don't have parents that have a church background. They may not have parents at all. And half of your job, in order to teach them the gospel, you're actually going to have to do a lot of preliminary work, or it'll be concurrently, you'll do it at the same time, but you'll have to teach them how to sit and listen. You'll have to teach them what manners are. You'll have to teach them how to play nicely with each other. You'll have to teach them respect for grown-ups because they just won't come to you with that stuff inbuilt anymore. 20 years ago, maybe you could expect that. Not today. So you're going to have to kind of be juggling a few plates in the air at a time, knowing that you're not doing these things simply because these things are a good thing to do, although they are. You're doing them because without them, you won't be able to do the other thing. And you're not just about their souls, but you love them because they've got a body and a mind and a heart and a soul and the whole package together, and you realise a one-dimensional approach to a kid is a fairly impoverished approach. That's going to look different for us in different contexts. That might include giving them the only meal they're going to get for the day, perhaps, as part of your group, which when you think about it is a wonderful thing. I mean, for obvious reasons, the kids don't go hungry. But I mean, you can't read 3 pages in the New Testament without hitting table fellowship, without hitting sharing a meal, without hitting generosity and hospitality. It's all the way through the New Testament and the Old Testament for that matter. So if you can do that, if you have to do that because of the poverty issue, that's a great burden on our hearts, obviously. But because you get to do it because of the poverty issue, it's a great blessing. You're opening these kids' experience to a whole dimensional community aspect of Christianity, which a lot of churches in more affluent areas just never get to. So, sorry, I'm preaching over top of your feedback, which is very rude of me. Anyone from this side of the room, what are some of the goals? Good, excellent. So we want non-Christian kids to become Christians. We want those kids who come to us as Christians, we want to grow them in their knowledge and faith to maturity. Yeah, fantastic.
Yes, a secondary goal after that would then be they are mission field wherever they are, so I want to get their brothers, sisters or parents involved.
Absolutely. Yeah, families these days, as I said, are not nuclear anymore, often. Sometimes they are, but not often. And often people don't come to church as a family. You'll get a mum or you'll get the kid. So there's 3 or 4 other, or 5, 6, 7 other people in that immediate family that you've got a bridge into now. Right? And that's not being manipulative, I don't think. Parents, no matter what type of parent they are, they'll go to a parent-teacher night at school. They'll go see their kid in a swimming carnival or at a school play or something, So we need to think, well, what can we do to encourage the parents to come and witness this part of their kid's life, the part that they spend with us in a Christian community? Does the Sunday school class sing in the morning service once a term, once a semester? It's kind of a cute thing to do. It's kind of nice for the kids. It's all exciting. But you'll get the parents from the non-Christian kids coming to, because my kid's singing on stage. It's a point of contact. That's a good thing. So those are some of those good goals. Now, this is going to be very different for us, partly because of our context, but for other reasons too. How are you going to achieve those goals this term? Now, you may already worked out how you're going to do this. Maybe you're thinking it through. You may not be able to give me all of them. Just give me one or two of them, and we'll start from this side, work our way around again. How are you going to achieve some of these goals? What are some things you're doing? Very practical, down-to-earth, obvious, everyday things. They might be very plain and very almost like non-spiritual things, but they're important too. So tell us, what do you got? No.
I've started the Youth Alpha program with the seniors,
Mhm.
and we tie in movies and discussion.
Mhm.
So 1 week we've actually got a movie, and the next week we tie back into God's plan and what Jesus would have done in such and such a certain situation.
Good.
etc.
So you've got a couple of things going on there. In order to achieve these goals, you're going to run a program that explains the gospel to them. And as an offshoot of that, or as a complementary thing of that, this program is going to use some multimedia as well, which is going to grab the kids' attention and keep them engaged. There you go. That's not a bad strategy. Thanks. What are some other things we do? Yeah. Great. So thanks for mentioning that one. You pray, all right? Now that is a very spiritual thing, but it's also a very everyday thing as well. It doesn't feel amazing. Often you do it, you're like, okay, nothing's happened yet. But that's really important. It's God's work, they're God's kids, and so we pray, ask for God's help. And we love them. Yeah, so that's where we're into the realm of relationships now. We realise these are not empty vessels that we're just filling with knowledge, but these are people created in the image of God who come from all sorts of good and bad backgrounds, and they need to be loved. What did Jesus say? By this will all men know that you are my disciples if you love one for another. That's what we're meant to be famous for. When people walk past your church, wouldn't the best compliment be, oh yeah, there's that church. I haven't been, but I've heard that that's the church where you get loved. Now, no one's going to talk like that, but that's the compliment you want, right? Because what parent... Look, I mean, I'm getting sidetracked left, right and centre, but hopefully you can work with me. Well, I mean, I've got 2 kids. I'm not going to send my kids anywhere if I don't trust the people, right? There's a lot of violence and dodgy stuff going on against kids. I've got to be pretty sure who these people are and what they're doing, and they've got to prove to me that they're worthy of me to entrust my kids to them, right? So the fact that you love kids and love the families is going to be a good step in gaining that trust. I think in the olden days, I don't know what that means, but it's just a handy phrase. In the olden days, people trusted churches. Not so much these days. There's always stories about this church who did this horrible thing, or this kid who got abducted, or whatever it is. And usually those are the exception, obviously. But people don't trust us like they used to. So you've got to think about that. And relationships, loving the kids, loving the people that come to you is a very, very important way of starting to re-bridge that gap. Over this side?
Encouraging dads and men to get more and more involved in children's work at Sunday school.
Good.
Because it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, great. So that ticks all sorts of boxes. Firstly, it's calling the men in the church to step up and do something. Secondly, it might be dealing with numerous other issues that we're about to talk about. Discipline issue. What about boys? They're a bit of a handful. How do you help with different levels of ability in one group? Partly having more hands is going to be the first thing, but having men hands as well as women hands is really important as well. I reckon in lots of contexts, you can grow up as a Sunday school kid and get to high school, and if your dad's not a Christian, then you may never have actually talked to a Christian man in your life. Your Sunday school teachers may all have been female, which is great blessing from God, best Sunday school teachers in the world, but no men in there is going to skew the balance a bit of their experience of the Christian life as a little boy growing up, maybe wanting to be a man one day. Well, I guess they all want to be men, but half of them never make it, unfortunately. Anyone else want to jump in on something there? I mean, you can see what we're doing here, yeah?
Just we ask questions the next week. How do you apply last week? How do you act that out this week?
Good. So don't be hit and run, okay? So when you do something and it works, then maximise it. Milk it for all it's worth. Next week, say, okay, we're going to start this week with a little bit of recap. Who can remember the memory verse? Off you go, right? And then you can recap that. So that's just teaching kind of skill, really. But then you say, and then remember what the memory verse taught us, that we want to be more like X, Y, Z. How did we go this week? Who had that? And then you also want to give them opportunity to expect them to do stuff during the week. So at the end of that lesson, you say, right, now you remember what we did today. Here's how it's going to work this week. This week, I want you all to go and, do this thing. Just a really simple 1-point little application. We're going to check it in next week. Next week comes, right, how did it go? So you help the kids to realise that this isn't kind of like like I said, filling an empty vessel. This is a lifestyle. This is a culture that we're embracing in. A culture which supersedes all our individual subcultures. It's the Christian culture of following Jesus, and that needs to be lived out, and people are going to check you on that in a loving, good way, and that's going to start all sorts of good patterns. That's a great one, thanks. Now, suffice to say, you can see where we're going with this, right? It may have been interesting, and you probably needed more time, but you might want to do this by yourself or with some friends from church. As you look at what are the things you do each week, and when I mean literally break it down, we have a 5-minute welcome, we have some juice, then we go into our groups, like that type of thing, right? Have a look at each of those things on your list and say, how does each of these things contribute to us achieving this goal? If, as you're looking through your list, you realise there's something that you do most weeks, and you think, hang on a minute, this actually doesn't contribute in any way to the big thing of what we're trying to do, then can I suggest you be ruthless and get rid of it? Okay? Because those are the things that clutter your program, those are the things that clutter your mind, those are the things that clutter the time, limited time you have, and they are either just ineffective or they're counterproductive. And that can be quite a hard thing to do. The hardest thing to do, I reckon, is not starting something new, but it's killing something that you've always done. That's really hard. But it may be necessary. It's good to do, right? So you might want to think through that list and see not only how are all of these things helping us, but also what's not helping us. Maybe we turf that and put something else in its place that will help us. Now, with that in mind, with that kind of framework, just getting us thinking in those channels, let's tackle some of these topics that came up. I'll mention a few things that might be helpful, and then I'll open it up to you guys. Can come back at me and say, actually, no, that's not going to work for us, or yes, that's good, and we've also done this. So we'll have a bit of back and forward about it. Let's just pick up that first one that came in about irregular attendance. Not children being irregular, that's a whole different story. You need to see your doctor. But we're talking about irregular attendance. Yeah, big problem, right? We get it, you get it, everyone gets it. So it's, you're in the right room, if that's how you're feeling. Here's a few questions. I'm going to give you more questions than answers. I hope that doesn't irritate you, but here we go. A few questions you might want to ask yourself and your group, if you're having irregular attendance. Number one, is your group actually worth coming to? You may run it because you love it, or because the church has always done it that way. But ask yourself, is this a group worth coming to? If you can't put yourself in the shoes of an 8-year-old or a 15-year-old, that's fine. Speak to someone who can and say, this is what we do. Would you go to this? Because sometimes we do things out of really good motives, but sometimes you need to shoot your dogs, okay? Sometimes you just need to call it a day and do something better, something different. And as I said, that's the hardest thing to do. But you might need to think about that. The kids, when I ask the kids to come to this group, are they hearing about Jesus? Is it powerful? Is it compelling? Am I excited about being there? Is this group big on relationships? The gospel's a relationship, right? It's not a philosophy, it's a relationship. So your group needs to reflect that. Are you very content-driven but not relationally strong at all? Do kids kind of sit there before the meeting starts, they just hang in the corner, staring each other off a bit? Are people awkward around each other? I don't want to go to an awkward group. I'm feeling very happy today because you guys are really friendly. Coming up, talking to me at coffee, hey, can I get you a glass of water, all that kind of stuff. I feel like a superstar. So I'm feeling good about being here because you guys are lovely people. You're relational, you're interested, you're warm, you're caring. That's what you want your youth group to be like, right? No one's going to come to a group where they feel like a weirdo or an outsider or a wallflower or awkward. So you might want to think through, is this group actually worth coming to? Even if we do have a good message, are we presenting it in a good way? That's the first thing. Next question you might want to ask yourself in terms of irregular attendance is speak to some parents. On the odd occasion that a kid does turn up to your group and the parent picks them up afterwards, walk the kid to the car and say, hi, Mrs. Smith, I'm Scott, and I'm little Bobby's leader, and I just wanted to come and introduce myself, say hi. That is gold, okay? That is gold. Parents love that. It's good. It's your responsibility. You must do it. And you get to know them a little bit, and then maybe if you see them after church, if they come to church, you say, look, let me just ask you about Bobby's class. You know, a lot of the kids aren't coming. I'm really thankful that Bobby is. Why do you reckon that is? What are the schools doing in this area that I don't know about? Where are all the kids on a Friday night? Ask the parents, because the parents probably know, because they're driving their kids all over the shop. And you might be able to find out from parents why kids are irregular. Often parents will say, oh, well, we come when we can, but he also has karate, you know, and he's almost at brown belt, and that's a really big deal in his class, so it's very important that he does his karate. In which case you say, okay, lovely lady, but not on my page, okay? Maybe a Christian, but hasn't really got the grip of the gospel that following Jesus could be more important than a brown belt in karate. And not saying that karate's bad or shouldn't do it, but we just need to work some priorities here. So then you'll know that you're dealing with some maybe unwilling or just unaware parents, and maybe that's where you've got to put in some work. Maybe when you find out why your kids aren't coming, you discover it's because none of them have lifts, and because it's a really poor environment, and if they come to youth, they're not going to get fed when they go back home, or whatever it is. So then you go, oh, okay, well, it's not really their fault. So how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to cover that gap? Well, we're going to have to start offering some food at our youth group, you know. How are we going to do that? We're going to need some money. Who do I know in the church who I can hit up for some cash? Hey, so-and-so works at Pick and Pay. And find out if they get some extra rolls at the end of the day. You know, you've got to think laterally and creatively, but maybe that's why. That's just a practical problem. It's not because anyone's evil or the devil's attacking you. It's just because you haven't thought it through, and there are some gaps here that you can fill and make life a lot easier. Kids will start coming. What are other distractions? Are you in an area where school is a big deal, private schools maybe, heaps of extramurals, sucking the kids' time? We're finding in Cape Town that schools are becoming more and more claustrophobic and grippy and intrusive, and they're not doing it because they're bad people, they're good people. I was a school teacher back in Australia, so I'm not anti-school teachers. But, you know, families are getting kids away from them on Saturday for sport for half the day, and then there's fashion show practice on a Sunday. Do schools here have fashion shows? Yeah, if it never comes, thank the good Lord, Betty, we'll talk about that later. But, you know, there are all sorts of things that suck, and your kids can't say no. Half it's compulsory. If they don't go, they're like, oh, why weren't you at the thing? And so there's a lot of pressure there. Those are all sorts, I don't know what the easy answer is, but you've got to talk to parents, you've got to find out what's what. You've got to pick your battles and say, right, well, okay, this is fair enough, but I'm drawing the line here. You've got to think through those kind of things. And you want to work out how do you engage with those extra things that are pulling the kids away from you without it becoming your main purpose. So if you need to feed the kids, then feed the kids. But don't fall into the trap that you now run a feeding scheme. You kind of do, but it's only by coincidence because you love them and Jesus loves them and he's the bread of life, but it's pretty hard to tell someone about the bread of life when they don't have any bread in their tummy, right? So you've got to do both, but you don't want one to swamp the other one. Just in the same way about, you know, interacting with schools or other extramural type activity type things. So those are some maybe questions you can ask yourself and some way you can navigate through some of those issues about it being irregular. Sometimes you've got to get tough. My experience in youth, sometimes irregular attendance, or the kids come but they always turn up late. That can be because there's just unfortunate situations which you need to be sensitive for and help them overcome. Sometimes it can be a vote of no confidence, especially with teenagers. Sometimes they'll turn up when they feel like it or turn up late, kind of swagger into the room, you know, sit down. And they do that because it's a challenge, right? They're laying it down, they're saying, I can come when I want to come, I won't come when I won't want to come, and my social schedule is what is at play here, and so stuff you. You know, I'm here because mum makes me, but otherwise I'll do my own thing. Now, you know, different personalities handle that differently. But that's a kind of attitude that is going to kill your youth group. And you kind of want to smack that on the head pretty quickly. Now, how you do that depends on you and the kid and your personality and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I literally smack them on the head. Can't do that anymore. I don't know why. I think it's a real shame. But so there might have to be some tough conversations there. When I say tough conversation, this is how I have a tough conversation with a kid in that context. I say, hey, Barry, it's really great you're coming. And we always welcome. The door is always open for you to come to our youth group. We're thrilled to have you. But you know what? you've been a bit of a snothead, mate, and I really don't appreciate your disrespect of me and this group. We actually really love this group. We think it's a great group. May not be your cup of tea quite yet, totally understand that, not forcing you to come at all. If you really don't want to be here and you're going to make my life difficult, I'll call mum and tell her to give you a term off. I'd rather we do that arrangement than you just being annoyed the whole time. But if you want to come, then you come on our terms. Now, trust me, you may not believe this, but this group is going to be great, even if we're only getting there step by step. And if you can trust me, if you give me the next 12 weeks of your life, I'll show you that this group's worth coming to. So what do you reckon? Have we got a deal or not? Now, maybe if I was speaking to a girl, I might do it differently, but I'm a bloke talking to a bloke, so that's how I'd do it. And he'd either go, no, I don't want to. I'll say, okay, fine, I'll call your mum. We'll see you next year. Fine, no sweat. You've got to be okay to let people go. You know when the rich young ruler came to Jesus? What must I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus told him, and he went, oh, I don't want to do that. And it just said he went away sad. What did Jesus do? Run after him with a tract? No, really, actually, you do want it. No, Jesus went, okay. No, that's not because he didn't love him. He did love him. But it's because there is a season for everything. It's because you're not God and you can't change that kid's heart. And it's because you can pray for him in the time being. And it's because getting the one rough kid in so that you can wear the badge, hey, I got Barry, who's the real troublesome kid, is not worth destroying your group for. It's not worth losing the 12 kids you do have because Barry's going to be a snothead and make everyone else snotheads in that group. So, there's a time and a place. So that's the kind of conversation I have. Either they'll say, no, not interested, in which case that's fine. Or they say, yeah, okay. And you go, great, see you next week. And then you keep to your word and make sure he keeps to his word. Barry, remember we said, not in front of everyone, but I said, Barry, last week you said you'd be part of this, dude. So if we're doing this together, we're doing it together. You're not sitting out. Come join us. Come with me. You can be my partner. Let's go. Bang, we do it. So maybe that's one way of tackling that side of things. But I'm talking too much. Oh, sorry. Any feedback or questions or comments about that kind of issue? Yeah. And that's tough. Sunday morning matches. You can't buy alcohol in this country on a Sunday. It drives me crazy. But you can play soccer on a Sunday morning. Honestly. Okay, yeah, and that's tricky. So you've got one of two choices, I think. I'm shooting from the hip here, so take this with a grain of salt. You've got one of two choices. Either you run your Sunday school not on a Sunday, or not on a Sunday morning. Now, that might work for you, or it might not. So you say, this culture is like a brick wall. I'm never going to break it. I'm never going to dismantle the soccer tournament on Sunday morning, which all our kids go to. So rather than just causing myself a lot of pain and suffering, we're going to do our group another time, when people can come. We've got two youth groups at St James, junior youth, grade 8 and 9, and senior youth, 10, 11 and 12. Senior youth was going great, and then it started to decline, number-wise. We had about 40, and we got down at 1.26. So I presided over the decline and destruction of a youth group. Can I tell you, that is not a good feeling? That's not a good feeling. I had a lot more hair. And it dawned on me that one of the reasons, we had a few issues, but one of the reasons was because we met on Sunday night from 5:30 to 6:30 or to 6:45, just before the 7 o'clock evening service. That's what I inherited. The plan was always that the older teenagers come in the evening and then they come along to evening service church, which is a bit more contemporary, a bit more sort of young adulty type of thing. And that was a bridge between that group and the next group. Fantastic. And that worked well for a time, but then it stopped working. And it dawned on me that these kids have school the next day. They never do homework when they're meant to, so they're always cramming on Sunday night. Their parents don't want to drive out especially for it. What do the parents do at 5:30? Do they sit in the car and then come to church at 7 o'clock, or do they drive home and then drive back? And I thought to myself, you know what, I've got to cut my losses here. So we moved that group to Friday night. We renamed it, gave it a bit of a facelift, plopped it down on Friday night, and now we're back up to 50. So I'm like, okay, well, there you go. See, sometimes it's not because people hate you, it's because you're stupid. I was stupid, and it took me between 40 kids and 6 kids to realise it, because I'm a slow learner. And then you change it, and in God's goodness, we're back up to 50. So there you go. Sorry, I was answering your question, not talking about myself. And so one thing you can do is move the group. The second thing you can do is challenge the culture. So you personally and other parents and your minister and council members and the people's warden can all be talking it up in all their conversations from the pulpit, at coffee, and say, you know what, soccer's awesome. But soccer can happen any time in the week. Sunday morning, 2 hours. That's all we're asking for, or 3, 4, 5 hours, however long your church goes for. That's all we're asking for, this tiniest window in 1 week. And you can't give us that? Well, then there's something wrong. Then I think you should actually not play soccer. I think playing soccer is awesome. I love the game. I think it's a beautiful thing designed by God for our enjoyment. However, when you play soccer instead of coming to church, it's no longer a beautiful thing from God. It is now a distraction of the devil, and you must stop playing soccer and come to church. That's the other conversation you can have. I would probably try that. Well, I don't know, depends on the situation. I like to swing some fists, so I'd probably go that way. But those are your two options. And that's tough, especially, I mean, you guys got beach here, you've got, summer all year round. It's a great place to live. It's too good to live, actually. And people are going to find a lot of other things to do apart from coming to church. Okay, let's talk about concentration and attention spans. Again, you need to rethink. The goal of our group is this. We're going to achieve it by doing this. And concentration and attention and discipline. Let's put discipline in as well. That comes in under that heading, doesn't it? Because you may have good goals, good intentions, but the way you're doing it is just running so counter to how kids learn, to how kids think, to how kids behave, that you're actually causing trouble for yourself unnecessarily. So let's think through a few things there, then you can come back at me. First of all, easiest thing in the world, check the physical factors. If kids are flipping out on you, check the physical factors. You're in a room. Is there enough space in the room? Have you got 40 kids crammed into a room that can seat 12? Because if that's the case, no one's going to listen. They're going to be squirming all over each other. Do you have any windows open? Is there fresh air coming in? If it's cold, is it warm enough? Have you got a heater? Is there enough light? Are people trying to colour worksheets or whatever they're meant to be doing, and it's so you can't see? Are the pencils blunt? Because you give a kid a blunt pencil and say, colour this in, no matter how diligent they are, in about 4 seconds they're going to go, this is stupid, and they're going to start doing something else. So make sure those physical factors you've looked into. If it's a Sunday morning, the kids are coming to you and they're all over the place, ask the kid, what did you have for breakfast? And if they say nothing, or if they say a lunch bar, equally bad, okay, they're hungry, they're not concentrating, they're jam full of sugar, they're not concentrating. So then what you do is you send a little note home to mum and dad and you say, hey, really enjoying having the kids here, but do you reckon you can give them some Wheat Bix or cornflakes or whatever it is that you guys eat for breakfast before they come? Because we're struggling here with no food in their tummies. You might want to check with the kids if there's something about the child in your group, youth or children, and they're a real just disaster in terms of discipline and concentration. I don't know how you broach this question with a parent in a way that isn't awkward if you're wrong. But you might want to say, is there anything about, Bobby's been a little bit disruptive lately and we're a bit concerned for him. Is there anything about Bobby that I need to know? That's the polite way of saying, does he have a problem? Okay? Is he on medication? Should he be on medication? What's the story from school? Is he having this issue at school? Now, you're not doing it as a criticism, well, your kid's an idiot and I think you need to pump him full of pills. Okay, it's not that. You're saying, I'm concerned for your kid. I know you love your kid more than I do, but I still love him and I want him to, he's not having fun in this group. So tell me, how can I help you make him have a better time? Is there something I need to know? Now, some parents are a bit awkward about that. They don't want to talk about it. It's a bit of a stigma. Some of them don't mind, but either way, that might be a conversation worth having. So those are some physical factors you might want to check in on. Then you want to look at what you're doing, and we've talked about it already. Is the material age appropriate? Michelle was saying that she uses that beginning with God thing for the preschoolers, which is really good, but sometimes she's got to beef it up. Okay, so I take it sometimes it's a bit too simplistic, or the lessons are too short, or there's not enough in there, right? So get some great material, but then you put your own stuff in and you cater it for your crowd, right? So check your material. Is that age appropriate? If it's too high or too low, if it's too low, pitch too low, they're going to be bored. This is baby stuff. I don't want to do this, okay? Are you expecting too much of them? Whether they be 6 or 16, are you now that sounds an odd thing to say because we say we have big expectations. This is the gospel and, this matters and that's true. But are you expecting too much of the kid at that point? Are you asking them to sit while you talk at them for 20 minutes? Because that's not going to work. Well, it depends. It works for teenagers, but probably won't work for littler kids. So are you expecting the wrong things of them? Perhaps at the beginning of the year with little kids, you need to make your lessons 10 minutes. Bang. Halfway through the year, you're going to bump it up to 14 minutes. And then by the end of the year, maybe you can get away with a lesson that's almost 20 minutes. Because as the year goes on, these kids get older and, little kids grow quickly. So a kid at the beginning of grade 4 is different to the kid at the end of grade 4, right? And so don't just hit the rut and just go teach. Think every term, okay, we're going to refresh this. I'm going to give them a few minutes more or a few minutes less. You've got to be aware of that kind of stuff. Are you varying your teaching style? Okay. Now, all of us in this room have different learning styles, and so therefore we need to cater with different teaching styles. I've only been able to do that in the most elementary of ways. So first session, I just talked at you. This session, we've done some group work, and then third session, there's a PowerPoint. That's all I could come up with. I'm sorry about that. A bit disappointing. But the point is, if you are a sit and listen learner, which some of you are, then the first session would have push your buttons. If you're a collaborative group worker, relational, I like to hear what other people say because it sparks my thinking, then this session might be more your cup of tea. If you're a visual learner and pictures and colours and graphs and stuff stimulate your thinking, then the third session will be more your cup of tea, right? So you need to think, well, how am I going to... I've got kids in my group. They're all got different learning styles. You may not know what they are initially. They don't come, unfortunately, labelled on their forehead. But you will discover that lesson was a flop. Okay, well, why was it a flop? Was it because the kids were hungry? Was it because you didn't prepare? Was it because you went out partying last night? Sunday morning begins Saturday night, folks, don't forget. Was it because of any one of those reasons, or was it because the material was just not quite pitched right? So you need to think that through as well. So in terms of concentration span and attention, there's so many things there that you can explore and tweak to get a different result before throwing up your hands and saying, kids these days don't know anything and they're, now that also may be true, but there's a lot of work you can do before you get to that point. Some of them might be helpful. You'll have to think it through. Any comments or feedback on that particular concern? Yeah.
Our senior group is grade 4 to grade 7.
Mm.
And unfortunately, we have like 3 sets of siblings. And they come to church and they're really fighting in the car.
Aha.
So like, even, you try and teach them and you already have a volatile group there that are picking on each other.
Mm.
I don't know if you have any tips about dealing with siblings in the same.
Yeah, well, the only two things I can think of is one long-term solution, which won't give you immediate results, and a short-term solution. The short-term solution is separate them as soon as I walk in the room. Either officially put them in different groups if you have the luxury of having groups. If not, if you've only got one big group and it's just you, then literally say, you're going to stand over there and you're going to stand over there. I mean, don't be like all about it, but just go, leave him alone, he's being an idiot. Leave him alone, he's being an idiot, right? And make sure that even if it's physically, that you're physically the barrier between the two of them so they can't egg each other on, right? So that may be one thing. The other thing, and it's something I've tried to think through because I just do it badly, we suck at this at our house, is there's a whole thing we need to think through about families, about Sunday mornings. Because often you get to church and you're rushed, you're tired, people slept in, breakfast was a disaster, little Jane wouldn't get dressed and Bobby's putting his underpants on his head and all this kind of stuff. You get the kids to church and everyone's on edge. Now that's not a good headspace to be in for doing church together, right? So the other thing to do is, I don't know, start putting out a newsletter or run a little, not a training day, that sounds a bit intimidating, but run a little parent morning tea after church and say, look, I struggle with this, I'm sure you must too. Here are 6 things that will help you get your kids to church in the morning without everyone hating each other's guts. And so you're helping parents, you're helping families, you're helping the wider church, and you're dealing with the issue of your particular group that these siblings are at each other's throats the whole time. So that's more of a long-term thing that's worth doing. But otherwise, I just say, it's survival of the fittest, really. Anything else on that? Yeah.
Might not be tricky for this, what you just talked about, but I just had a thought. Something that I sometimes find difficult is kids whose parents don't come to the church. And because they don't know their address. They can't know their address. Date of birth. Some of my kids don't know their date of birth. So when they, at the start of every year, give out like an application form to all parents to fill in for their children.
Yeah.
Because then you'll have a contact number of the parent, you have the address, you know where the telephone number is, and maybe you can have something on there like health issues or something.
Absolutely. And that's very important in case, just for everyone out there, hi everyone. We're talking about getting a little sign-up form at the beginning of the year, beginning of a term for a kid. Tricky, sometimes kids don't have that kind of, obviously little kids won't know that, so the parents are going to have to do it. That's good for lots of reasons. One, it connects you with parents. You see them face to face, and something official like that puts a parent at ease. Okay, these people are taking this seriously. Secondly, if there is a drama, they fall over and chip their tooth and there's blood everywhere, and if mum and dad don't come to church, they're not Christians, then you have a number to call to say you've got to come pick up your kid because he's bleeding from the mouth. That's not a good way to start a conversation on the phone, but you need to have that for medical reasons. Thirdly, there might be something going on in this kid. Maybe this kid's got epilepsy, you know, and maybe he just comes with his cousin and the parents don't know where he is half the time. This kid has a fit in your presence. You're responsible for that. There's all sorts of medical and legal implications, as well as, shame, the health of the poor kid. You need to know that. I don't know what it's like up here in Cape Town. No one really does it, but it's official, I think, now that everyone working with children has to have a police clearance. In our neck of the woods, that is a real pain because it just doesn't come easily and it's expensive and it's got to be renewed every 6 months and it's just a hassle. But all our children's church workers, helpers, have that bit of paper. And so there are certain legal things that you want to be careful of. You want to know how many kids arrive at your program in the morning and how many leave. You want to make sure they leave with the person that dropped them off, and if not, that there's been a phone call or some communication to understand otherwise. Kid's going to get abducted. I'm not trying to scare you, but stuff happens, and all it needs is one mistake or one evil person, and your church is toast. Your ministry is toast. I'm talking legal suits. I'm talking the whole palaver. So please be careful, and maybe a form like that might be really, really helpful, and it might avoid other issues as well. Let's talk about boys, particularly, because we're so charming. Particularly that kind of age group, 8 to 12-year-olds. They're just absolutely nuts, and they're full of energy, and they're running around, and they cause carnage, and you can't control them. Interestingly, I did mention that there is, you used to have adults and kids, and then you had adults, teenagers and kids, and now we have adults, teenagers, tweenagers and kids. If you're not familiar with the phrase, a tweenager is someone between the ages of 8 and 12. They're shrugging off associations of younger childhood and they're aspiring for older teenager status, but they're in between, they're the in-betweeners, right? And we're going to talk about them more in the next session. But it's not just some egghead behaviouralist categorisation, it's a real thing. So what we've discovered is that just speaking generally about that age group now, is that the grade 6s and 7s, the last 2 years of high school, they were just not doing well with the grade 4s and 5s because they thought those kids were too little, too babyish, they were too tough, and people were starting not to come, kids didn't want to come. So we started a group, we have the grade 7 group, I think it's called 7 Up or something like that. So the grade 4, 5s and 6s are together, and then they graduate to 7 Up. 7 Up has their own room, they've got their own 2 dedicated teachers, they've got their own program, which is more pitched at that in-between, I'm about to be a teenager kind of thing. The kids love it, they go all the time, it's their special thing, and then they graduate to youth at the end of that. So we thought, okay, that's a battle that we're not going to fight. We're actually going to acknowledge this cultural phenomenon and we're going to adapt to it because it seems like the smart thing to do and it's been really helpful. Now, boys in that age group particularly obviously get a bit crazy, a bit mental. So here are a few things that might be worth thinking about, and you, again, can come back at me with your own ideas and experiences. First of all, if wherever possible, try and get some male leaders, get some blokes. Now, that is classically quite tricky in Sunday school because guys don't usually gravitate to teach Sunday school. Can I say, though, for those of you here who are men who teach Sunday school, that is awesome. And you want to get guys doing that. I think some great guys to teach Sunday school are sort of what I call young adult, student age, 18 to 25, for a few reasons. One, if they're studying, they've got available time. Secondly, they're old enough to be responsible. It's not like a 16-year-old kid trying to look after 4-year-old kid. Sometimes that's not that good. But also because, God willing, those are the guys that will become fathers one day soon if they get married and if they have kids. And they're going to have absolutely no idea what to do with the baby when it comes along in their family. But if they've been living Sunday school for a couple of years, then they're going to have some good exposure to how to train up a kid in the fear of the Lord. Now, that's just not good for the kid that they're dealing with. That's good for their family in the future. And it's given them exposure to that kind of experience. And that's the kind of men we want to see in churches, and that's really good. If you're a parent or a grandparent and you're able to be involved in children's ministry, that's just pay dirt. We love you people. I'm sure you're loved here, but come to Cape Town, we'll love you even more there. Because, first of all, you know kids because you've had your own and you've made your mistakes on them, and so now you're going to get it right on these guys. But also, kids and boys are looking for father figures, for role models. They don't have a lot of them, especially if their own family's a bit dysfunctional in whatever way. They're being peer socialised at school. In other words, they're being socialised, but they're being socialised by their peers, and we'll see in the next session that can often get ugly. And so having an older Christian guy who A, cares about Jesus and B, cares about them I hesitate to use the phrase, but can be the silver bullet. It can turn a guy around. It really can. So that's really important. If you can get male leaders, that's fantastic. Stephen Biddulph, who is a family psychologist, writes a lot of really interesting, good stuff. Not a Christian guy, but says just some fantastic things. He says that any boy, and really any man for that matter, but certainly boys in children's and youth ministry, that's my context, not his, but I'm taking it over, will ask 3 questions when they walk into a room. Who's in charge? What are the rules? And will the rules be enforced? Who's in charge? What are the rules? Will the rules be enforced? If they don't know the answer to any of those questions, if the answer is not obvious, they're either going to feel very awkward and at sea and unsure of themselves, or they're going to go Lord of the Flies and they're going to be in charge and they're going to make the rules and they're going to bully kids and enforce them. I find that was just such clarity, and that's been my experience as well. That doesn't mean you become the dragon, you become the prison master, but that means you're aware of that. So that means that you communicate to boys very clearly. Hey guys, fantastic, good to have you. You can feed off their energy if you like, that's fine. You say, guys, come in for a huddle, you know, you get them all in. Guys, we're going to start our session now. A few things you've got to know. Number 1, I'm the boss. Say after me, Scott's the boss. And Scott's the boss. Okay, I'm the boss, right? Number 2, the rule is you don't get out of your chair unless you put your hand up. You with me? Okay. And last of all, if you do get out of the chair, I'm going to hit you over the head with it. I don't know, you've got to make up your rules. Whatever the rules and the consequences are, you communicate to the boys what are the expectations and what are the consequences. That's going to make them feel safe and that's going to make them feel under control. Now, you'll still have crazy kids who say, well, I'm going to do what I want to do anyway. But just generally speaking, that's going to make your morning a lot easier, I think, a lot more manageable. And when you need to bounce a kid, you don't just go, right, that's it, you're out of here. You say, hey, remember the rule. Who's the boss? Scott's the boss. That's right, Scott's the boss, right? And what do we, that's right. So what were you doing? Okay, because it's not just about punishing them, okay? It's about maturing them. So it's helping them to see that when they break rules, it goes badly for them. Now, you're not their biological parent or their adopted parent or their carer, but you are really a spiritual parent. And so when Paul says in Ephesians, I think it's Ephesians, children, obey your parents so that it may go well with you, that last bit's important. So we tell our kids, or we did when we were going through this phase, you listen to mum and dad because your life will be better if you do, okay? It is better for you to listen to me. You'll have more fun, you'll be safer, you'll be happier, you'll be smarter. So trust me. So now you may not explain that to the kid in the moment, but that's going in the back of your head because you're a Christian, you know your Bible and that's how it works. So you're wanting these kids to have a better experience of the Christian community, even if they're Christians or not. So you're going to do some of these rules. Maybe you stick the rules up on the wall. Maybe if they're little kids, they're just pictures. Lips with a line through it or something, a picture of someone's hand up, whatever it is, to help communicate that to them. Maybe if you're creative like this, you put the rules into a song. If you're the guy with the guitar strumming away, write a little song about the rules and get everyone to sing it at the beginning of each morning. Or if you're into hip hop or rap, make up a little rap about the rules and get everyone to rap it out, or whatever it is. So be creative, be fun with it, but who's in charge? What are the rules? Will the rules be enforced? Big deal for boys. And last of all, is your group aimed at girls? Is your group a little bit wussy? Is it the sort of group that no self-respecting boy would walk into? Like, are the walls pastel pink from the creche with pictures of Winnie the Pooh up there, you know? And do we all do a little ring around the rosy to begin the morning, you know, and hold hands? Hold hands. Culturally, that may not be a problem. From where I come from, you hold a guy's hand, you're making a statement about where you're at, you know. Interestingly, when I was at college, my first year at college, it was in like my first term at college, there was a guy from Tanzania, great guy, older guy, mature age student. He was getting married, and we hung out at Res. He was a really nice guy. He was, yeah, anyway, don't worry, I got stories. And he came to me very serious, Scott, I need to talk to you. He was sweating, he was nervous. I'm like, sure, but okay. So I said, Zach, what do you need to talk about? No, we must walk and talk. I said, okay, let's walk and talk. So we go out of the Res and we walk down the street, and he goes and holds my hand. And he doesn't say anything. I'm like, oh my goodness, this guy's gay. He likes me. Oh my, now, I'm an Australian, right? I'm stupid. I've been in the country for like a month, right? So I don't know Africa, I don't know anything. So then he talks to me, he's getting married. His big anxiety is he doesn't have a suit for the wedding, he can't afford a suit. He was hoping if I could get some guys together to chip in some cash to go buy him a suit. And I'm like, oh my goodness, oh, of course. Oh, I'll buy you 2 suits. You know, back where he was from, guys hold hands, you know, when they walk and they talk about something important or to express friendship or because they've got something big they need to talk about or they're asking for a favour. And anyway, why am I telling you this story? Holding hands, that's right. If you make your boys hold hands, that might be totally not cool. It might be fine, or it might be not cool. Think through that stuff. If your group is a little bit wussy, if I can be the blockhead male for a minute, then kind of make it a little bit tougher. Not at the expense of the girls. I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, okay, everyone take off your shirt and run around the room, that kind of thing. But think about how is this group going to click with a kid, with a boy, you know? Now, I don't know what that's going to mean. For your context, you do, I don't, so you figure it out. But that's an important conversation to have with yourself. And again, maybe even if you've got some good parents that you know and trust and who send their kids regularly, say, hey, how do we make this group better for the boys? Boys are usually quite, what's the official word? Kinesthetic? Is it? No. What's the word I'm looking for? That's all you OTs, yeah? Learners. In other words, they learn through movement and touch and tangible and activity. You know, you don't sit down with a boy and say, tell me how you feel. Okay? Everyone's talking about, in youth, I don't know if you guys do this here, it's a great thing, meeting one-on-one discipleship with your teenagers, right? Fantastic, I'm all for it. But for the longest time, I couldn't work out how to do it. Because what? Do I take a kid and I go have a cup of coffee with him? First of all, which 15-year-old boy drinks coffee? Maybe some of them do, but none of the kids I hang out with, and say, so tell me, how's your walk with the Lord? It's like, you know, is this guy like a pedophile or something? What the hell's going on? So what I do is we walk down to McDonald's from my church, which fortunately is a few minutes down the road, with a soccer ball or a frisbee, which we're kicking to each other as we go, and we go get a sundae and we walk back again. Never are we stationary. We never sit together because that just is awkward, right? We're doing stuff. Men, boys relate over activity. Ladies, why do the guys always go out and fix the car when they've got time off and their mates come around? It's not because they don't like you. It's because they don't like each other. No, they need something to do to not feel awkward to talk to another man. They don't look him in the eye. They'll look at the carburetor or whatever it is when they do it. That's cool. That's okay. That's just how we are. Just love us the way we are. But make provision for that in your group with your kids, okay? Think that through a little bit. That might be helpful too. We're out of time, mate. Folks, we can continue this conversation at lunch. To think I was worried we wouldn't have enough to talk about. We only got halfway through. So let me finish in 30 seconds. Just rewind for a second. The reason we're talking about all this is not because we're plugging holes, not because we're pragmatists. We're principled pragmatists. We have principles, that is, the gospel. But we're not idiots, and we don't just do stuff that doesn't work because we're masochists, okay? So we want to do the thing that works, but the thing that works is going to be dictated to by our principles, which is the gospel, what we saw in 2 Corinthians 14. In order to do that, we've got to think, what do we want to achieve? How are we going to get there? I've got a group of boys, I want them to become Christians, but they're busy running around the room hitting each other with rolled up newspapers. Okay, my strategy is ineffective. Let me chart another course to that, which is faithful to the gospel, but takes into account the situation I'm in, and then we're going to have much, much happier groups and, more importantly, more effective groups in reaching kids for the kingdom. So if you can rewind all that, things like not letting them, getting the kids to have breakfast before they come and opening a window are a very important strategy in reaching your goal. We're not just talking spiritual content, that's important too, but we're talking the everyday stuff that we so often overlook and make life so much more difficult for ourselves. Thanks.